Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of Fast Talk Tuesdays. Today, we're going to be talking about onboarding that doesn't bite. I think most of us have had the experience of starting a job where we really liked the team, but we came on and there was absolutely no idea about what they should be doing with us that first day or how to get us acquainted with the team. And we know from the data about human resources, about employee experience, about productivity, we know that onboarding that is done right leads to better outcomes in terms of productivity and in terms of employee retention. So today we're going to talk about onboarding, and it's only going to be, again, if you've never done a Fast Talk Tuesday with me, 10 minutes of talk and 10 minutes of Q&A. So if you are out there watching, and I can see that there are quite a few of you, feel free to drop in the comments, why you're here today, what your onboarding experiences have been like, where you're coming from, all of that good stuff. But I keep things moving, so I'm going to hop right in while you get to telling me a little bit about your onboarding experiences. So here we go, onboarding that doesn't bite. What does that even mean? Well, first and foremost, it's about not being disorganized, to use a double negative, right? It's about being organized. It's about having a method that you can apply with every new hire so that they get the same quality of experience and so that they're ready to do the work they need to be doing. And it doesn't feel stressful every time somebody comes on because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So we're going to start with just a few simple strategies you can apply today. I talk mostly to like the startup level crowd. There are things that I might do differently if I were working with enterprise level learning and development, but a lot of these strategies will apply no matter the size of your organization. So first, it's all about creating a movement with moments. And what does that mean? Your organization is driven by a mission, by a vision, by a purpose, and your goal for this person you're onboarding probably isn't going to be able to get them doing every single task they need to do in their job with 100% efficiency in the first few days, but it's going to be getting them on board with this movement by providing moments that help them to enculturate, to become oriented, or if you want to think of this as like freshman orientation in university, that's a good way to kind of think about it. So how do we create those moments? We're going to start with storytelling. So what is the story you want to sell? Again, you've probably got your vision, your mission, your purpose, but what does it mean to actually be part of your organization? Now, with teams going remote and teams going hybrid, flexible scheduling, just having frontline workers who aren't all there at the same time, it's going to be really important that you capture that somewhere that isn't just an interaction with a manager. So think about some simple things that you could do to help them understand what it might be to be part of your team. You could do a day in the life video, right? Grab a few snapshots of what it would be like to go from the moment you get to the office to the end of the day, especially if it's, a particular department. Maybe it's just a way to help them see kind of what you do. You might do a really simple welcome letter. So maybe you're grabbing the CEO and a few of the other big leaders and a few of the other key team players to do a little 30-second, hi, welcome to the team, just so they feel like they get to know people. It might be about the why, right? So that's a really important piece. Why are you here? Why are you in business? What is the thing you're hoping to accomplish? If you can really get that messaging clear, it's going to bring them in with you from the moment they get started. So that's a really easy win, but often gets overlooked in terms of paperwork, which is going to take us to the next piece. Have a really clear checklist of the documents you need on day one. A lot of my experience is, people come in on day one and they're sort of like files that live everywhere. And maybe one person in the office knows where to get all that stuff. So really easy win when you're getting ready to do this onboarding is to make sure it is all in one place. Now, for our clients in particular, we've set up social learning networks. And one of the things we do is we create a whole learning path that's just, they're going to go down the documentation and click it all. And they put it into a file, and then they send the file off to the manager through, if you use Microsoft. That's a really easy way to create a private way to share those documents if you don't have an HR system. If you have an HR system, then just make sure you've set it up so that the right documents are going to the right people at the right time. We use Gusto on my team for a lot of that, more HR paperwork, but there's going to be different solutions for different organizations. Now let's do the fun stuff. You've got your documents, you have the whole list, everything they need to know, your W-9s, your, I'm going to forget all the documents, but you got it all and you've got it all ready to go because you've got that list, unlike me, in front of you. Before day one or as day one starts, I highly encourage you to send a swag kit. I know it sounds maybe silly, but if you're working in a remote environment or a hybrid environment, there is something really meaningful about knowing that there are real humans on the other side and it's not just people on the internet talking to you. So when we get new interns, new employees here, I send a small swag kit and it's been really well received and it really makes people feel part of the team. So for us, I don't have a lot of swag. We're a small business. So we start with, I've been sending a copy of our ID affirmation journal. We send a sticker with the Your ID logo on it. And I send a rocket book and some pens to everybody. So it's not a huge expense. Probably the whole kit by the time it's shipped cost me $40, but it makes such a big impact on day one. And then they have a notebook that they can keep all of their supplies with. You could do something simple too. Send a pair of socks, send a little snack, send something that just lets them, again, feel like they can represent the fact that they're part of the team. So for us, it's the sticker, and helps them feel remembered and thought of. Now, we talked about the story you want to sell, the documents you need, the welcome kit, and the swag. The next one I recommend is the who's who. So almost every organization I know has some kind of org chart. For us, most of our tools will actually build one. So again, we use Gusto. Gusto will build one. We use Workplace by Meta. Workplace by Meta builds one. But what these org charts don't typically have is not just the who's who, because everybody has their job titles and their departments listed, but really the why, who's who. So I encourage you to go back into that org chart and create a little list of why you go to this person. So if it is your project manager, what are their key goals or responsibilities or questions that they answer? If it's your HR team, who handles what? Who's handling benefits and compliance? Who's handling more of the day-to-day stuff? Are there specific people? If you can get that all listed, that solves a lot of problems for the new employee on day one, because they might not be familiar yet with the titles you've given people. They might not be familiar with sort of the level of personnel you've got. So if you're a small company, maybe it's kind of flat, right? My project manager and I, in many ways, we kind of just collaborate. But at a larger organization, where there is a CEO and, a whole bunch of teams, just being able to see that chart and see, oh, we've got directors and managers and, there's managers of several levels. And this is why we go to this person versus this manager, even though they both have manager titles, is a very helpful way to get people where they need to go, to cut down on question asking, and to make sure that, they feel confident that they're seeking out the right person. So they're more likely to take that initiative on themselves. Now, the last one I'm going to add here is goal setting. So often in this whole process of orienting someone to your business, you're focused on, well, what do I need them to do? And that's going to be important, right? You should be setting expectations during this whole orientation process. You're supposed to set the goals you want them to achieve. But I'm also going to encourage you to take time to set goals with them about what they want to do, during their 30, 60, 90 days, like traditional onboarding, but also about what they personally are looking to achieve. So perhaps their bigger goal isn't, to be in the C-suite in 5 years, but maybe it's they really want to spend 6 months abroad and they've never been able to do that before. Is there a way you can tie their work goals into their personal goals, which makes it more motivating for them to stick around? A lot of people don't have these conversations with their new hires, and thus they get into like 6 months later and they start looking for new work, and you're like, well, why? We gave you all of this great stuff. And it turns out they didn't feel that they had room to grow or to achieve the things that they wanted to achieve in their lives. So having these goal setting conversations early on can be really helpful. We make it simple. We just keep it as a conversation between mentor and new hire. And that's always worked really well for us. So before I shift gears to the Q&A, which I totally encourage you if you have questions, the last piece I would just say is you're going to need tools to do this. So, once upon a time, maybe shadowing and all team meetings and, team lunches, maybe that worked for you, but odds are if you're working in this remote hybrid environment, it's not working for you anymore. And if your team's growing, I would say beyond 10 people, it probably isn't working for you anymore either, even if you're still in an office. At our organization, as I said, we use a tool called Workplace, and it's by Meta. So it's essentially Facebook for work. And so we've done some really simple things. I know it's a little small, but hopefully you can see kind of how we structured it. In lieu of a learning management system, we've got a bunch of posts that are organized. So we start with some good to knows, and the good to knows are things like, this is our team's availability, and this is how we communicate. These are some key features of our workplace collaboration tool, Workplace. So it tells you, this is what's in the knowledge library. These are the kind of things that we use the share what you learned group for. This is the kind of stuff we use this other group for. And it gives them a little bit of a baseline, and then they continue to move through. So the post you're seeing here it's for our intern who we just onboarded. And it just says, imagine for a moment, it's May 25th, you've completed your internship, you're off to your dream job. What is it? So we want to make sure that we're setting, this intern's learning intentionally to make sure she's accomplishing the goals that she wants to accomplish over the next few months. And you can do the same. Now, I have a toddler, and so I am consistently all over the place in terms of my work schedule and sometimes my mental state, to be quite honest, right? You're thinking about other things. And so we have really flexible scheduling. Our project manager also, has children, and we have another employee who's overseas in the Philippines. And so we're all on different time zones. So it's been really important to create this space where we are giving this structured onboarding experience, and the new hire can kind of go through it on their own and then use our other collaboration tools to check in with us. And then we have, a short check-in meeting once a week between the new hire and the mentor. So that's how we work it. One other thing I'll show you is just, we've made it really easy to, this is terrible view. I apologize. Let me remove the background here so we can see it a little better. Yeah, so that's a little better. So this is also a really important document. We were talking about documentation before. Your mission, vision, and brand voice should all be documented in a way that's easily accessible for everyone. So this is about that story you want to sell, but this is making sure it's also documented. So here, again, we've used the knowledge library on Workplace to create some brand guidelines, and then a little bit about our brand story and our brand identity, so that any new hire can plug in, use the right colors, the right style of voice, the right guiding principles from day one. So now that's it. I think I went even a minute over our 10-minute talk. I'm going to turn over to the questions, and I'm going to go ahead and pull this down. All right, so I see one of you out there, Michelle, friendly face, recognize you, talking about some broken down onboarding. And this happens. It's going to happen whether, the onboarding wasn't intentionally designed from the beginning, or it was designed for a moment in time that the organization has now surpassed. So, for me, it's going to be about creating that, again, that moment, that movement, right? It's getting them to feel that they're part of something bigger than themselves. And how do you do that? Storytelling, connection making, right? Making sure they feel connected to people, making sure they feel welcome and able to ask questions, because they're not going to know everything on day one, no matter how awesome they are. And to make sure the information they need is accessible beyond that first day. Think about your first day, right? Michelle's probably got this because I know she's a great designer, but just think about your first day of work and how overwhelming it was. No matter where you go, no matter what role it is always overwhelming. There's just so much that you're trying to remember, and biologically, your brain physically cannot remember everything that is thrown at you on day one. It's just not going to happen. So if you're expecting people to learn from this onboarding that then, is done, again, it's just shadowing, or it's just one-on-one conversations, or it's just, a few meetings with colleagues and then they go live and that's it. Well, they're not going to remember. They're not going to feel good about their experience. And as we, again, know from the research, what you're going to see is people who feel confused or that they haven't been prepared are going to leave their jobs. And they can, honestly, people who have good onboarding perform up to 50% more productively in their first 6 months than their counterparts who have poor onboarding. So there's a lot of value in creating a really great onboarding system. So as you think about this, what I would encourage you, and maybe Michelle, you can tell me a little bit about what you're thinking if you're comfortable with this. But as you think about your onboarding, remember that story you want to sell. So I talked about it in terms of actual storytelling, but also like what is your brand story, or, to use kind of the Gen Z term, what's the vibe? Does everyone who joins your organization pass the vibe check? Create that vibe. So if you're a very playful company, your onboarding should be playful. If you're a very serious, buttoned up, conservative company, that's probably the experience that your onboarding should reflect. And it's not a bad thing if it's conservative versus like we play the ultimate video game. It's just a difference in the message you want to send, right? In some ways, the medium that you use for your onboarding is also part of the message. And then I'd also say, think about that in terms of transparency and think about that in terms of like what you want that new hire to do. So I think of clients who are really anxious about getting on video, but they expect their employees to be on video. So if you personally as an owner are like, oh no, I'm too nervous about recording myself in a 30-second welcome. Well, do you really think your new employee is going to then feel comfortable getting on board? No, you have to kind of let your ego go and like do the thing, So I'm going to pop this one up. Do you also have onboarding for freelancers, consultants? And if so, is it different from permanent employees? This is a great question. Yes. So Christina is familiar with my business and she knows we do. We have about, last year we had about 20 freelancers that worked in addition to our staff members. So what we do is, again, we use Workplace by Meta. It's our social learning network. It's our workplace collaboration tool. We're big fans of it. We set it up for our clients too. And we're using this to essentially set up project teams. So Slack is great. We've used Slack in the past because of a messaging tool, but it's just not robust enough for what we want. And there's something about the user experience that didn't really do kind of this more holistic feel that the social learning networks have. So what we do, again, coming back, we set up project groups. And in those project groups, we set up guides so that we have a little bit about the client, a little bit about the project goals. I'll usually rip out the proposal minus the pricing, and I'll share that in the group. If there's some pertinent information about the kinds of content we're working with, we'll share it in that group. And so they are going through a bit of an onboarding process to get familiar. We also use Loom. I think I've talked about Loom on every single episode of Fast Talk Tuesdays we've had, and I feel like I should be an affiliate right now, but I'm just saying it because I love it. They're not paying me to say that. But Loom has been really useful for many reasons, especially with freelancers. One of the reasons is because we're all, again, operating on different time zones and different workflows, right? They're not part of my team. They're not expected to do the things my team does. So it's been really helpful to be able to record myself talking about, let's say, a process that they need to complete and just posting that up instead of doing 12 meetings about this with 12 different freelancers. And I also like that, Loom will automatically convert to a transcript. So people can just kind of scan the document if they're looking for something pertinent. You can tag it, you can organize them into libraries. So I'm a big fan of also using Loom. And then, so we got the groups, the guides, the Loom, and then the other piece of the puzzle is it's got posts. So, right, I'm scheduling posts at intervals. I can schedule surveys so I can find out, how the team is working together. And I often will, we've got the chat. So the chat feature's there. But that's not necessarily the onboarding stuff. That's like after the onboarding. For the permanent employees, I think the difference would be it's just not project specific, so they're getting a little bit more about who we are as a brand, and they're getting a little bit more of like the tools we use as a company and their the payment systems and all of that stuff. But I think it's more like what the onboarding will look like. The general stuff looks like the general stuff. And then there's a few specifics that I would probably say, these are for instructional designers. This is for project managers. This would be for voice talent. And that would be maybe a little bit different once you get to that level. Okay, so we're going back to that original discussion we were having about the onboarding that needs to be revamped. And so the work is very people focused and caring, and I'd like to push that story. I think that's great. That's totally what I would encourage you to do, Michelle. I think there's, a level of brand voice that will come through. And so it'll probably feel, it's not going to feel like Blue's Clues. It's going to feel like a government agency, but I do think you can tell the story of the people who work there and the impact they're making. That's probably really important to a government agency, right? They might not be so focused on all the money they can make, which something like Apple might be super jazzed up about the changes in technology and being that kind of thought leader. But your government agency is all about serving the people, right? So that's the kind of story I would try to tell. Okay, well, that was the whole Talk for 10, Q&A for 10. If you have more questions about onboarding, you can always find me at Nicole Papiano Lugera on LinkedIn, or you can ask some questions in the chat thread. It stays live pretty much forever. Or you can direct message your instructional designer and we can get to chatting. I'm looking forward to next week, and I am terrible at marketing our Fast Talk Tuesdays because I always forget what the next topic will be. So stay tuned. You'll see what it is shortly, and I'd love to see you there. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.